ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. This is episode number 295, and I am your host, Ellis, otherwise known as Train Man. This footage we're watching is from Under Construction, episode 75. If you want, you can watch that. It comes out at about the same time as this does, and if you have any questions or comments about the Zombie Train, questions that you'd like me to answer like this one, you can post them in the comments down below, and any other questions should be posted in the other video's description, or comment section, I should say, because I'll answer them on the air. That's what I do on Under Construction, for those who don't know. Anyway, let me pull up the full text of this comment, because I was doing some research, but I forgot to do this. It's actually from Ice of the Blue Lion, which is interesting, because I think it's one of the first questions. I think it's the first question that we've answered of his, which is, again, interesting because he's such a fixture of the Under Construction series. But anyway, you know what, I can't find his comment. I said it was on episode 229, but I cannot find it here, so I assume either I did it wrong and it's in the next episode, or the comment got deleted. So, Icer, if you watch this, let me know what the heck happened to this comment. But it was about the B&O Museum, which is interesting, and I keep saying that, but I haven't talked about this museum very much. Now, the museum itself is actually quite expansive and very, very cool. It's a full donut roundhouse that's enclosed, and originally I'd written the place off for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that it was in Baltimore. It's downtown Baltimore, and I was like, well, there's no way we're going to be able to get to that, and I'll bet you it's rail locked, because what I was used to was, I was thinking about Toronto, where the museum there is rail locked, and there were a ton of nice engines in there, and we really had a we had a tough time getting them out. But even that wasn't enticing enough, because I figured out it's a bunch of old engines. There's a lot of 1800s engines in there. Yeah, we could get them out here and resurrect them, but they wouldn't be worth much. So I was double wrong, because not only were there a lot of nice engines in there, including some pretty good-sized Malays, and a Northern, and a Berkshire, and a Mikado, and a Pacific, right? Yeah, there were a lot of engines in there. I could go on and on and on. There was a Hudson, a bunch of 10-wheelers, a couple of consolidations, some American types, one of which was the William Mason, which I can come back to in a moment. And also some diesels, which, of course, we didn't really use. But anyway, yeah, so I was double wrong, and I I wrote the place off, and I was countermanded in the field by somebody who was like, no, we're going there, we're going to go right now, we're going to go get some of those engines out. And so they went, which was not something that I had sanctioned, and I don't remember who this was. It was one of my subordinates at the time. This was, relatively early in the Zombie Train Incorporated. And this person had some, I won't call it delusions of grandeur, because they weren't really delusions. He did everything he needed to do, but was, we're going to go and get the engines at the B&O Museum, and this is the last I heard from them. And so I figured they tried to get into Baltimore, they got screwed, and now they're all dead. And then they show up back in Quonset using the William Mason, which was, for those who don't know, it's one of the oldest engines. Well, I'm not sure it's one of the oldest, but it's one of the older engines in there. It's a 440. It was used in the Great Locomotive Chase, which was, the silent film. But it was also, this is what I knew it from, it was used in the Wild Wild West. So it was the engine in the Wild Wild West. I can't remember what the name of the engine was. But, apparently, I didn't know they were running train rides. But yeah, they did. And so they showed up back in the William Mason, which sort of proved to me, you can get engines out of there. And apparently they had taken a bunch out of the museum proper before they had become overrun. And they did lose a few people doing that, which I was not happy about. but they did manage to get some engines out, and they went for the big ones first. We actually got the Reading engine, the American Freedom Train #1. I think that's 2101, I think, maybe. Unless, either that or it's 2100. And they got out the Berkshire that's in there, which is a C&O Berkshire. They got the Mikado, they got the Hudson, and that's as far as they got. They didn't get the Malays, because they figured they were too big to move with their little American engine, and they didn't get a lot of the smaller ones because, like I said, they only got a few out before they were, overrun. The thing is that there were quite a few engines in and around the property that, well, A, that I didn't know were so accessible, and B, now that I knew were so accessible, I was very interested in, not the least of which being, their Malays in general, but particularly the Allegheny and the C&O Malay, which was 1309, and 1309 is a 2662, and at a glance, just like many things, at a glance, I thought, oh, this is in pretty good shape. And then we realized that it wasn't in pretty good shape as we tried to repair it. That turned into a veritable disaster, that rebuild. People were pushing for it to be done there in Baltimore, and so they sort of won out because I wasn't sure what to do with this. This is one of the first Malays that we'd gotten our hands on. And I was like, is this something that, that you can do there? And so, and they said, yeah. Meanwhile, we'd evacuated like all the other engines. They said, yeah. And so I let them do this. I let them bring the engine back to Baltimore, which was my first mistake, because the area was not secure. And I let them start working on it there. This was a serious breach of, protocol and just sort of common sense for me. I hadn't visited the place. I had a lot of images now because they had taken pictures while they were there to show me all this stuff that was there and the condition of the track in and out. But they had taken it all out and they'd brought it somewhere, I can't remember where, nearby, sort of like northwest of there. And we were preparing to move it to another place that we could restore things in. I think it might have been closer to Altoona. It may have been Altoona, but it might not have been. It might have actually been Strasburg, but I don't know why we would have necessarily done that, because Strasburg's shops can't handle engines of that size. I don't know. There are a few options, because, you're just south of Pennsylvania. You have a lot of options as to what's a good shop to run to and do the work at. But anyway, also there were people saying, take it to Newport News, take it to the naval base, we'll work on it there. No, we didn't end up working on it in the naval base. But anyway, the engine went back. The engine went back to, by the naval base, I mean shipbuilding. But it went back to Baltimore because they had convinced me that, all the parts are there, the equipment is there that you need to get it underway. And I believed them, which I shouldn't have. That was mistake number 2. And mistake number 3 was believing that they could deal with anything that came their way. So, not only were they in Baltimore, they didn't have the right equipment, but they could not handle the freakishly high number of zombies that were in Baltimore. Baltimore is not a small city, and it's not far from many other large cities. So they started taking that engine apart with whatever tools and machinery that they had, and this is a place that I'm not sure we even had restored power to, so they might have been running a generator or something, which is mistake number 4, because now you're making noise constantly. And they start taking this engine apart and realize that they don't have the manpower, they don't have the machinery, and then they get run out of town by thousands of zombies. Thousands, if not tens or hundreds of. This was a situation where we ended up bringing that horde south, and that's, towards Newport News, the issue, of course, became, okay, we're running out of railroad track. But we got them out onto that peninsula. We had to abandon a locomotive out there, which I'm pretty sure was the William Mason, actually, again. We had to abandon a locomotive out there at the very tip of the peninsula there, and then we called in the Navy. Because we did not, at this point, have the manpower or equipment, similar situation, see? Or firepower to deal with all those zombies. And now you're saying, you led them from Baltimore to Newport News, and the answer is, yeah, it was a long time, and it was a lot of panic and a lot of figuring it out. It cost us a lot of goodwill, with the people who had sort of fortified D.C., because they ended up all coming through there, and we did lose a lot in the rivers and stuff. So that we accidentally... So, again, it became a disaster of the highest proportion for us, because we gathered this huge horde of zombies, we plowed them through a already existing settlement, and basically wiped it off the map. And then they followed us, very slowly, as zombies do, for dozens of miles. In fact, is that dozens or is that hundreds? That's a long, long way to go. Yeah, no, it's a couple hundred miles that they followed us, between highways and railways and along the coast, and we tried to pick them off, but there were still unbelievable numbers by the time they got down to Newport News. If I were to do it again, I would send them a different direction. I would take them north towards Philadelphia, but the issue was, you're taking them north, you're sending them towards Lancaster and Harrisburg and all that, all that area that we had been using fortified. Harrisburg was pretty cleared out. Not that we were really using Harrisburg, but it was a choice between sending them south or sending them toward an area that basically we had already prioritized and secured. And we made the decision to send them south, and it wasn't like a split-second decision. It was like, well, they're coming this way, it'll be a few days until they get here. What are we going to do with them? And it's like, okay, we'll fire up some engines, or, fire off some weapons, or, make some noise, and they'll come south. But we did end up getting all those engines out of there. We even did go back for the William Mason, although the William Mason actually, it ended up getting a little bit shot up. It would have been a nice showpiece, but after all the fighting that went down at Newport News, because of that giant horde, we didn't have to write the engine off, but it needed a lot of work. And it went into service, again, years later, because it was not high on the priority list. It was not something that we were like, oh, we have to get this out there. The other stuff was high on the priority list. Now, what happened at 1309? 1309 got dragged out of there. It got sent, where did it get sent? It got sent south somewhere into another shop that, not the same guy was running, but he did oversee that restoration, because I guess he wanted to finish what he started. But, anyway, yeah. Did it get sent south? It got sent elsewhere. I'm thinking of it as south, but it might not have been south. It's south relative to me. But it got sent somewhere nearby with a half-decent steam shop in a relatively small town. So, yeah, that's that. That's the story of 1309 and the B&O Museum engines. That place got ransacked because, as I said, the people that were occupying it got run out at least twice, and also they made a mess of the place when they were trying to build their engine. That was the other complication. They took the engine apart, then they were ran out of town, then we had to deal with all this, and meanwhile, we had to remove the engine and bring it somewhere else, but it was not an engine anymore. It was a bunch of engine pieces that we then had to cart up separately, because, like I said before, they had the equipment to take it apart, but not enough equipment to actually get it back together. They didn't have that kind of stuff. However they did get it apart was not with a big crane and stuff like that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Trainman out.